75 minutes of insight from one of the great coaches ever in any sport. It's going to be conducted by a gentleman who many of us know. He is the director of sport instruction at the University of Georgia. As well, he studies expert coaches. He's a consultant for PGA education and coaches PGA touring professionals. Please welcome Dr. Paul Schempp.
Thanks, Michael.
He also is a meticulous dresser, by the way. Ironed up that shirt nicely today. And the gentleman that we're going to get a chance to listen to for the next 75 minutes really doesn't need an introduction. We were back there earlier having some fun. He's just the best, most winningest coach ever. But let me give you some of his fun statistic here. He owns the NCAA record for most career wins and bowl wins by a Division I coach. That number, by the way, on wins is 377. In 2006, he was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. At FSU, he won 2 national championships in 1993 and 1999. He also has 2 very talented coaches who, along with Bobby, had undefeated seasons. 3 in the family, undefeated seasons. Please welcome Coach Bobby Bowden. Sit right over here, Coach. You want to speak over there? Perfect. Want me to sit here with you? All wrapped. Want me to hang here with you? I feel like an idiot.
Well, it's good to see all of you. I had wanted to come down and speak to this group. 2 or 3 years ago, I'd called him and asked him if I could come down here and speak, and he said, "No, you're not ready." So 4 or 5 months after that, I said, "Look, I'd still like to come speak to that golfing group, because I love to play golf." He said, "Well, you say ready." So finally this year, I called him and said, "Look, I want to speak to that group. I'll pay my own way. I'll pay the gas. I'll pay for the hotel. I'll pay for the food." He said, "Now you're ready." So here I am. Oh boy. Of course, I'm living up in Tallahassee, Florida now, and I spent a lot of time in Panama City, Florida, which is about 90 miles west. Ann and I had 6 children. The oldest was a girl. She married a high school coach. Then my next son, he was business, and the next son was coached at Clemson, the next son coached at Auburn, and the next son coached with me, and then I had a younger daughter. She married a player, but thank goodness she wasn't a coach. But anyway, we were able to raise those 6 children, and I think we all eventually, when we retire, will end up over in Panama City. But I was going to kind of tell you how my coaching career went. I was at West Virginia University coaching. Now I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. Coached at Florida State, coached at South Georgia College, and ended up at West Virginia University as assistant coach. Then I became the head coach up there. After 6 years, Florida State job opened, and I took that job. Now Florida State had been losing games. I mean, they lost. See, they were 3-8, 1-10, and 0-11. Well, they'll get you fired. So I got the job. I go to Florida State. Stadium seats about 41,000 back then. It's about 80-something now. And they wasn't averaging about 17,000 people at the game. Now, you in college coaching, baby, you got to fill that stadium. Because it pays all the bills. Football probably plays 95% of the athletic bills at Florida State. It makes the money, So I'm sitting there, I said, man, I got to get people to the game. So anyway, the first year there, as the head coach, I got 10 complimentary tickets every game. Free tickets. Now with a complimentary ticket, you can do anything you want to, but you can't sell it. It's against the law to sell it. Well, they're for your family. Well, so I gave my wife Ann 2, because I couldn't go with her. My daughter was still living with us. I gave her 2 for her and her friend. My son was still living with us. I gave him 2 for him and his friend. I had a neighbor. I gave 2. I had 2 I couldn't get rid of. Nobody wanted them. I saw the janitor a couple of days before. Hey, I'm going to give you 2 tickets. Mr. Good Guy, I'm giving you 2 tickets. I don't want them. I said, man, I got to get rid of these tickets now. We've got to have people sit in those stands. So the day before the game, I go down to the Tallahassee Mall to get a haircut. I said, I'm going to get rid of these tickets. I put them tickets, I pulled up right in front of the mall, the main gate. You know, when people on Saturday go to a game, they all go down to the mall and shop before the game. I put those 2 tickets on the outside window of my car. Now, somebody will get them, you know, at least I'll have them 2 people there. I go in and get a haircut. I'm in there about an hour and a half. I come out, there's 6 tickets on my windshield. Now, that's how bad it was. I like to tell that story because that's kind of where I'm coming from today. Usually when I speak to a group, that's what I'm doing now all the time. That, and if I'm not speaking, I guarantee you I'm hitting that golf ball. You know, I might have told you this story. Chris Winkie, who played quarterback for us, a heck of a golfer. He's about 6'5", about 225, can hit a ball a mile. I was out watching him hit practice balls one day. He had a 2-iron. He was hitting his 2-iron about 225 yards, man. And when he'd hit it, the thing would back up. I never seen anybody back up a 2-iron. I said, Chris, how do you do that? I mean, how do you make a 2-iron back up? And he said, well, I said, could you show me how to do it? He said, yeah. He said, how far do you hit your 2-iron? I said, about 160. He said, how come you want it to back up? You've heard that too, haven't you? But anyway, so I had a selling job. I think, now as I talk to you today, I'm talking about organizing a football program, right? But the carryover is the same. I've noticed so much that my business, running the coaching business, is just like running any other business, you know? The only difference is we get our name in the paper, we get our picture in the paper, we get criticized if we do bad. You know, if you're lucky, maybe they don't hear about you, you know. But the organization, everything is very much the same. And when I came to Florida State, I had to get a new coaching staff. I cleaned out the staff. I let them go. Because they had been losing so many games, I'm just afraid they were making a habit of it. You know what? And I got to hire winners. So I'd hired the best men I could find that had been around good winning programs, you know. Now I'm one of those guys that always believe in hire people smarter than you. That sounds like a simple statement. Who would hire somebody dumber than them? There'd be a lot of people that they're afraid of somebody that's smarter than them. But boy, that's what I'm looking. I'm looking for somebody that's smarter than me, and I'm looking for somebody that wants to be the best. I'm going to hire people who want to be the head football coach, you know. Because if I've got people with that kind of ambition, I don't have to drive them. They'll work themselves. They'll drive themselves, you know. I'm not worried about somebody getting my job, you know what. And I know this, when I met my staff, and you know some of the things I'm saying, how would it pertain to you as a golfer or a golfer? See, it'd be more of how people you would hire and how you would run your program, you know what. But when I hired my staff, and we had our first meeting together, just think now, me, 9 assistant coaches who had not worked together. Some of them I'd used a little bit about, some of them I didn't know as much about, although I had checked to be sure they had the character and the ambition I was looking for, you know. And as I sat down with my staff, in my book there, I list the number one thing that we've got to have in this staff. The number one thing, men, we must have, and that is loyalty. Forgotten word nowadays, isn't it? I don't see all that loyalty that we used to see. Look at the coaching profession in football. It used to be a coach would go at least 5 years before he ever got let out. The first year he goes there, he doesn't get there soon enough to recruit, so we'll forgive him. Then the next year he should be able to recruit good. And 4 years later, he better be pretty good. If he's not, we've got another coach. Now then, what do you see? I saw a coach last year get fired 1 year. Can you believe that? Takes the job and gets fired in a year. He hadn't had a chance to show what he can do, you know. We see coaches getting fired in 2 years. But anyway, that's the way it's changed. And I know it's, you know, like I say, the carryover in my profession and yours, very much the same. You've probably seen it in your profession too, just as well. You know, people hired. But anyway, I had to meet with my staff and go over the parameters of our staff. And here's the first thing I had to do to my staff. Men, I know how to win. They ain't won in 3 years here, you know. They didn't know how to win. I know how to win. Now, I'm telling them that. You know, maybe I've wondered, you know. But I've got to sell them. I know how to win, and if you'll do it well, like I say, we're going to win, you know what? Now, your job is to get with those boys and tell them, you know how to win, and I know how to win, and get them to follow and listen to you now. Now, if we can get that done, you know, we're on our first step of building this program, because it all begins in believing. Now, let me show you how believing played a part. So my first year I go to Florida State, we go out there. Number one, we got to decide how we're going to build our team. Are we going to take all those older guys that played last year and the year before and build around them? Or are we going to cast them aside and take these freshmen and these young kids and build around them? Now, if we take the older guys, they know what they're doing. They're more experienced. They're more likely to win, but they're gone after this year. These guys here don't know what to do yet. They haven't ever lost. They don't know about losing, but they've got 4 more years. Well, we decided we'll build our team around the older guys. Let's don't just push them aside. Let's give them a chance to turn this program around. So we go through spring training. We go out and play our first ball game. We play our first ball game. We're selling them, we can win, we can win, we can win. And we played our first ball game. We were ahead in the third quarter. We got beat in the fourth quarter. Well, boys did pretty good. Go play the next game, same thing. We played pretty good. Get beat in the fourth quarter. Oh my goodness. Next game we play, we get killed. We get beat 47-0. You know what? So I go back to the office, go back to the school that next Monday with these coaches. I said, man, we're going to have to go to them young guys. We're going to have to go to those young. These guys don't think we can win. They do not believe we can win. Now, these young guys, they ain't ever lost. They don't know you're supposed to lose. We're going to go with them from now on, you know. So the next week, we were playing sweet old Oklahoma. They were number 1 in the nation. They won the national championship the year before. They were on an 18-game win streak, and we fixed to play them out there. We're going to get killed, because I'm going to play them dadgum freshmen. We put 7 freshmen in our starting lineup, boys who a year ago were in high school. I'll never forget it. I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 on offense, 2 on defense, and a kicker. We kick off to Oklahoma. Now, if any of you remember them back in this would have been what, 76. God, they take that opening kickoff. I think they got the ball on the 20. First play they ran their fullback right up the middle, man. And it looked like Moses parting the Red Sea, boy. That thing opened up, and that fullback come gashing up that gut. We finally caught him after about 50 yards. I said, oh my goodness. At least if they ran around in, it would take time. They just go right to the goal line. Oh man, they're down about our 30-yard line already, you know, and so they run the next play, they fumble. They recovered, but they lose a couple. Next play they run, and the back goes the wrong way, and they mess up the signals and don't gain anything. Now it's 3rd down and about 9. They run a play, pick up about 7. It was 4th down and about 2 or 3. And I'm saying, oh, Lord, please kick. Lord, don't go for that, please. We can't stop you. You know what? So Barry Switzer, y'all know Barry, great coach. He sends his kicking team in there. Boy, thank you, Lord. And so they kick an extra point and they get 3-0. But I'm thinking that ain't bad, man. I mean, they took at least 3 minutes on that drive, you know. And so, but then they kick off to us. They kick off to us. I don't know what to expect with these dadgum freshmen. We take that dadgum ball in 12 plays and knock it right down their throat. It's 8 yards, it's 7 yards, it's 6 yards, it's 5 yards. We take it right in for a touchdown. 12 plays. We missed the extra point, I remember that, you know. And then we kick off to them and we battle back and forth. First thing you know, we're on their goal line again. 1st and 7 on the 7. We got a 6-3 lead, man. You know what? And we fumble. They recover. But we fought them pretty good. They go out at the half about 7 ahead of us. They finally beat us, I forgot the score, maybe 31-18 or something like that. But golly, man, I'm sitting there playing all them freshmen. You know what? But what the point I'm bringing out, 4 years later, those freshmen we were undefeated. 4 years later, you see. But here's the difference. When I was playing with the older players, they had lost so many games, they subconsciously could not believe they could win. You know what? These freshmen who had talent, but they were totally inexperienced, they didn't know you're supposed to lose, you know? And I remember the way our season went that year. We went into the last 3 games, we were 2-6. 2 wins and 6. We won the next game 22-21 in the last minute of the play when we went for 2 and won 22-21. Next ball game, we were playing in 5 inches of snow. All them Florida kids they had ain't ever even seen snow. And we ended up pulling that game out at the end, you know. Then the last game, we were playing Virginia Tech in Tallahassee, and they had a 4-point lead there on our 3-yard line with a minute and a half to go. All they got to do is pull the ball and sit down, the game's over. They run it, fumble, we recover, hit a 97-yard touchdown pass next play, and win the game. We won our last 3 games, see. Now, why do I even tell a story like that? It shows you the power of believing. I don't know of any game that's more true than the game you're in. If you don't believe you can do it, you can't do it. You know it? And you've got to have that confidence. You've got to have that confidence. It's the same in football, just like anywhere else. But it's a big lesson there. I learned so many lessons in coaching. I could tell you so many stories where it was such a big thing, you know what? But I know this. We have a saying that you got to have leaders. You have got to have leaders in building a program. In building a program like you're building, you know what? You have got to have leaders. And if you don't have them, you better make them. Leaders are not born. Leaders are made. I've just seen it time after time after time. You know, I know this. I'm supposedly a leader. You know, you can't be a head football coach without being a leader. I don't ever remember being a leader. All I know is I'm the head coach and I'm responsible. You know what? When I was a young kid coming up, I was very shy. I would be the kind of guy to stand over on the side of the wall at a dance, not speak to anybody, and you know, and all of a sudden I became a leader. I'll tell you all about my first head job. My first head job, I was 25 years old. I go to South Georgia College as a head football coach. Now, they don't play football anymore, but they used to. Georgia used to have junior college football. They don't have it now because everybody's losing money. So I go over there, and they offer me the head football job and the athletic director's job and the basketball job. I had to take basketball to get football. I know nothing about basketball, but I had to have that football job, so I took it. Didn't do too good in basketball. Won the state championship in football, but basketball, that, you know, I don't think 8-8's too bad first year. You know, we lost 8 on the road and lost 8 at home. But I was the AD. I was the AD, so I fired me. Went and got me a basketball coach, you know. and got that thing solved. But anyway, learned a lot of lessons there as I was coaching my first year. But I've always, one thing that I mentioned to coaches and I mentioned to business executives when I'm talking to them is this, because a lot of people don't understand this. You as a leader are a problem solver. That's all you are, a problem solver. You want to make a lot of money? Solve problems. Those are the people they pay a lot of money to. You know it? And you've got to do it because you're going to have problems. If you don't have problems, you're going to have problems. You know what? I always felt like when I was coaching, when things are going real bad and I can't hardly stand it, I know something good's fixing to happen. And buddy, when things are going good, you better watch out because you're fixing to get hit with something. You know what? I found that so true in my career. And so you just have to accept it. It's part of life. You know what? But again, you've got to know, you've got to solve problems. You know, that's what a leader has to do. Now, I've read so much about leadership. Most of the talks I make are leadership motivation, leadership motivation. Leader. Got to be a leader. The leaders that I have studied about down during history, they have several virtues. Well, you could name 20, 30, 50 virtues of leaders. But I notice there's 3 of them that all the great ones have. One, they are men of integrity. Now, you remember this. You're a leader. You're a leader. You must have integrity. In other words, just be honest. Just be honest. If the people under you or around you ever find out that you're not being honest, baby, you fixing to hit the skids. You know, they've got to trust you. And I notice all the great leaders were men of great integrity. Then another virtue that all the great ones had, they were, like I say, they were men of compassion. They were men of compassion. You know what? They loved not only those working above them, but they loved those working under them. I bet you in your profession, I know we've seen it in my profession, you ever seen people that are just great to the people above them, but they treat those underneath them like dogs? If you ain't run into that, you'd run into it before you finish up. You know, it's just kind of the way it is, you know. But not the great leaders. Not the great leaders. The great leaders treat those under them just like they treat those above them, you know. A lot of leadership books that I read usually about military. I love military history, you know. And I read of the famous generals down through history and the one to me that the greatest general I ever read about was Napoleon. I always thought he was a lover. Well, I'm sure he had a little of that too, you know. But he was a great general. All the great generals after him, they all talked about Napoleon, you know, what they learned from Napoleon. And one of the things that made him so great was the compassion he had for his men, see? Now, in your business, you've got to have compassion for the people working with you and under you because it shows and they respond to it. And I must show it to my players. You know, if they know I love them, you know, and they know I care for them, then they'll give it back. They'll pay it back. And that is so big in leadership. Then the third thing, virtue I think that the great leaders all had, they had courage of their convictions. They had courage of their convictions. In other words, they believe this is what needs to be done, and this is what I'm going to do to get it done. You know what? And I ain't backing off of it, and you ain't going to change my mind. You know, men who had courage of their convictions. I tell you, one of the greatest statements one of the greatest, simplest statements was made by Robert E. Lee. After the Civil War, Robert E. Lee became president of Washington University, Lynchburg, Virginia, which is called what now? What's the name of what's the name of that school now? Washington and Lee, named after the general. But anyway, after the war, he becomes president. Got to have a job, you know. Probably, I don't know, probably had 250 students there at that time, and probably all boys school, maybe even military school at that time. I think it was before the war. But anyway, Robert E. Lee had one boy that was always getting in trouble. And the story goes, he called him into his office. Son, if you don't quit doing this, you're going to have to do this, we've got to do that, you must not do this, that. But anyway, the boy ended up asking him, said, General Lee, just what are the rules here? What are the rules here? And Lee said, son, one word, kindness. Kindness. Have you ever thought about how simple that is right there? Have you ever thought about how this world would be if you and I were just kind? Does that cost money? Is that hard to do, to be kind? What if everybody in the world was kind with each other? Then we wouldn't have all these killings, would we? And these murders and these molestations and the things, the robberies and things that we have today, you know. But anyway, simple answer by a great leader. Where's that one? What time is it? Oh, there's my clock right there. All right. But anyway, those are some things. Let me kind of go into this a little bit. Now, these are stories I use. I talk to all kind of people, folks, leadership people. So I'm telling you stories I tell them, right? Because this next story I tell, to me, is probably the most important I talk about. I have a favorite proverb. It's Proverbs 4:23. It says, keep your heart with all diligence, because out of it come the issues of life. Did you hear what I said? Out of right there come the issues of life. I heard that statement made. I was at a graduation exercise back in 1950, and this professor who was giving the talk read that psalm and made that statement. I said, I never thought about that. Everything I do starts here. If I move my hand, it has to start here, thinking, If I say something, it has to start here. Everything. Those secret seeds that you have in your heart, they stimulate you. And anyway, when we talk about the heart, when Psalms talks about the heart, or when you hear a coach talk about the heart, son, you got to have heart. We won today because we had more heart than they had. They beat us because they had more heart than we had. Heart. They're not talking about a muscle. They're not talking about a muscle that pumps blood. They're talking about your mind. They're talking about your will. You will do what you will. And they're talking about your emotion. That's your heart, And so keep it diligently, because, in other words, keep good things going in there, right? How in the world are they going to get in your heart? Well, it's through your ears and your eyes. Not through your nose, that's where air comes from. Not through your mouth, that goes to your belly. Right here, through those ears and through those eyes, goes into your heart. And then you're going to take it and decide, take bad stuff in there and bad stuff's coming out. Take good stuff in there and good stuff's coming out, So that's a lesson that I think is very important. Now, last story. My favorite football story, and I got a million of them. My favorite football story is something that occurred between the University of Illinois and Michigan in 1939. 1939, Michigan was the number one football team in the nation. They had won the national championship the year before. They were undefeated. They had played about 5 games and won them. Now, they're fixing to play Illinois. Illinois had won a game. They had the worst team they'd ever had. I heard the coach tell this story about 50-something years ago. I heard him tell the story, about his Illinois team. He said, we couldn't beat nobody. And we're fixing to play Michigan. We ain't even scored, And he says, so that Monday when they started practice, their captain was Mel Bray. I spoke up in Illinois about a year ago, and I happened to be in his hometown. I told this story. They said, oh, we know him, Mel Bray. Ain't that funny? But, but anyway, where was I? But anyway, now Mel Bray is the captain of this Illinois team. His mama dies. He got to go home. Coach said, go home. So he had to go home. They practiced that week without their captain. Coach said it was the most uninspired week he's ever had. We ain't got a chance. We're going to get killed. Boys don't want to play. You know what? So on that Friday before the game, they took their team out of town and stayed in a motel outside of town. Now, all schools do that, try to get the players away from their family, try to keep the players away from their girlfriends, you know, where they can concentrate just on football. We did that at Florida State. So this Illinois team goes out of town a couple of miles, stays at this hotel. Night before the game, they're sitting out there like you are around tables where they've just eaten. The coach is up here giving them their last instructions for tomorrow. All of a sudden, the back door opens. Little bitty room there. Disturbs everybody. They look around. God, it's Mel Bray. Mel Bray's coming back. He sticks his head in the door. He said, Coach, before anybody says anything, let me say this. I want to thank all y'all for those beautiful flowers you sent my mama. And I want to thank you for those notes and those phone calls. And if y'all think I came back up here today to get beat, you're crazy. That's all he said. Coach said you could hear a pin drop. Coach said, looking, they want to dry out there. Said those guys had a certain glare in their eye he ain't seen. They had a certain jut to their jaw he hadn't seen, you know. He said normally by 9 o'clock I have to tell them to get up and go into their room. He said by 8:30 they all just kind of got up on their own and drifted to their room. He said before I went to bed I went by their rooms to see them and tuck them in and be sure everything's okay like I always do. And when I went by the room, said they were just sitting there staring at the ceiling with a certain look on their face. They never seen anything like it. They were okay, but they're just entranced. Well, you know what's going to happen, right? They go out the next day, and this Illinois team that has not even scored upset that Michigan football team, which is the best football team in the nation. Now, if anybody would remember, the names are too old, but Tommy Harmon was the tailback. Evashevsky. We were talking about Evashevsky. He was a blocking back on that team. You know, they had about 5 All-Americans on that Michigan team. But Illinois beat them. So the question is this. Is this Illinois team that hadn't won a game, is that the same team that beat Michigan? Well, got the same uniforms. Got the same muscles. Same size. But they're not the same team. Because the issues of life come from the what? Heart. Now don't you forget that. I don't care if it's golf. I don't care if it's football. I don't care if it's baseball. I don't care what it is. Don't forget, keep this thing straight. Because that's the way you're going to respond. I guess my time's up. Let me get my notes. No, I'm okay.
Okay. Coach, mind if I ask you a few questions? And then I'm going to open it up for about 20 minutes, and I know many of you have questions that you'd like to ask Coach about, and you'll have hopefully plenty of opportunity to do that. By the way, thank you very much. That was inspiring.
Well, thank you. I hope it was okay.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, we're not keeping you from a golf game, are we? Because that's against policy
yes,
here.
Yes, you are.
We know that great coaches, in the research that we've done, it really comes down to 3 things: the knowledge they have, the skills they have, and what they learn from their experiences. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about those areas.
Sure.
Let's start with skills. For most of us, when we begin in any field, whether it's golf instruction or coaching football, there's usually role models that we have, mentors perhaps. Who were your mentors or role models, and what did you learn from them that's helped you through the 57 years that you coach football?
Well, I grew up in a football community. I grew up in I look at my shape. The shape I'm in. I was raised in Birmingham, Alabama, and my house was backed up to a high school football field. And that high school won about 3 state championships in a row. You know, it was the hottest thing going. I'm just a kid raised there, but that's the environment I was raised in. We moved when I was about 5 and moved about a half of a block from a college football field. So I lived the next until I was 18 there, you know what?
Wow.
So I felt like I've always been around football. It led me into coaching, you know. And so some of the famous coaches back in those days that had most influence on me, one would be Bob Nalen, who's the University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
Now, not just me, but I'm talking about every coach in the country. Today, so much of the defensive philosophy is still Bob Nalen stuff at the University of Tennessee, you know. Of course, Bear Bryant was only 30 miles down the road.
Right.
And so I would guess he was my closest hero as far as a coach was concerned. And I learned more from him and his staff probably than any other staff I was around.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up a little bit with that. You know, Vince Dooley's a friend of mine at the University of Georgia, and Vince actually used to do something similar to you. I don't know if most of you knew this, but Bear Bryant had a policy where if you were a college coach and you weren't going to play him in the next 2 years, you can come during spring practice, and I understand everything was wide open. The only thing you had to do was buy him dinner.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what he told Vince. And that happened to you as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What kinds of things did you pick up from Bear Bryant?
Well,
as
what
a
I
coach?
tried to do, I think the things that helped me most in coaching was every spring I would go visit another college to try to learn, you know what? In other words, I could call, let's talk about General Nalen. I called Tennessee. Can I come up there and watch y'all practice? We don't play them, so they don't mind. And I did the same. They'd come to our school, too. As long as we didn't play them, I ain't letting them come if we play them. You know, but they'd come down and visit us, I'd visit them. So I'd go up there and stay 2 or 3 days and get their drills and talk to their coaches and have meetings and learn football. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Next year I might go to Georgia. Next year I might go to Alabama. Next year I might go to Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then in the summer I'd go visit the pros. I visited the Green Bay Packers when Lombardi was hot, you know, and the Cleveland Browns when Paul Brown was hot, and those guys. That helped me. I probably learned more football doing that than anything I read.
Great. And if you could go visit a coach today, I hope this is a fair question, who would you want to visit and what would you like to ask him?
If I could visit with a coach
Yeah,
today?
any coach today.
See, you know, I would probably want to talk to Frank Leahy.
Okay.
Frank Leahy coached at Notre Dame. He won 3 national championships in a row, I think 47, 48, 49, about those times. And I would like to question him on what his philosophy was. I tell you, I remember one thing about his philosophy. Now get this. We don't do this. I don't know of any other coach that does this. When he would practice his guys, he would make his coaches get down and block.
Wow.
Block them guys, you know? Here's a coach, 40 years of age, got to get down and block that big 280-pound All-American there. That's bad, you know? And I read his book. He would do things like that.
That wasn't a policy
like to
you
watch
adopted at Florida State, was it? That wasn't
no,
I didn't think so.
Goodness
Okay.
gracious. I'd get up on a tower where they couldn't get to me.
Well, Coach, you've been really generous. I conduct a research laboratory, as Michael mentioned, and no coach has participated in more of our studies than Coach Bowden. In fact, 2 of my students have done doctoral dissertations with you, and one of them was Mark Smith. And when Mark was interviewing you, he asked you about your knowledge base, and this was your response, if you don't mind me quoting you. You said, "I've been coaching 51 years, and I feel I know about 60% of what's out there. No, maybe 50%. There's so much more out there. When I stop learning and adjusting, nobody will have to tell me to retire. There ain't much wiggle room at our level. When we stop adapting, we'll start losing, and I'll want out."
Well, that is true as you're coaching. As long as I did, I remember I coached 57 years. That's a long time. That ain't the longest ever, but I bet you it's about third or something like that in football, you know. But you have to keep up with the times. During those 57 years, I changed offenses. My first 4 years, I did this. I noticed people winning and were doing that, so I did that the next 4 years. Then I noticed these other guys are winning, running the option, so I put the option in and, you know, changed it. You got to keep up with the times. Had to keep up with the times.
So
and
you were
the people that can't keep up with the times usually ease out.
Yeah. So you were a continual learner throughout
Yeah.
your entire career.
Oh, yeah.
What resources did you rely on that, as golf instructors and coaches, might take a look at too, that helped you to continue to learn? What
Well, I would
resources?
read everything I could find that would,
Okay.
where somebody was talking about how to do this or how to do that. And then I would visit, like I say, other schools in the spring, just the ones I know whoever's winning, I'm going there, you know.
Right.
And then in the summertime, I went to the Green Bay Packers and a lot of those guys, because Green Bay was on top during that time. I've sat with Lombardi many a time just watching what he was doing and trying to learn by that.
If I could tell a short story, I already reminded you of this. Another one of my doctoral students, Brad Vickers, who's now at Mississippi State. Brad was with you when you were doing your Nike high school clinics, and as you and Brad were walking out to the parking lot, a second-year assistant defensive coordinator from a high school in Florida came up to you with this great idea for this defense that was working for them, and he wanted to share it with you to use with the Seminoles. And Brad said, you listened to that kid like he was Vince Lombardi. And then walking out, he said to you, Coach, that guy's a second-year second-string coach. Why are you listening to him? And you paused for a minute, you pointed your finger at his face, and you said, you never know where the next great idea is going to come from.
And that is true, and I know this in college coaching. So many of the new ideas come from high school. Yeah, are you familiar with the wishbone? You've heard of the wishbone, right? That started from a high school coach. And remember Ballard out in Texas was running the wishbone. You know, why do they call it the wishbone? Because it looked like a back and three guys behind him looked like a wishbone. And then Darrell Royal hired him at Texas. Darrell won 2 national championships running a wishbone. The idea came from a high school coach.
Shows you we could learn basically from
Oh,
anybody,
yeah.
right?
Yes, sir.
Well, you mentioned you're an avid reader. Is there a particular book you might recommend for a beginning coach to read that might be provide some guidance for their career?
You know who in college football, basketball, baseball, college thinking, do you know who most coaches think the greatest coach ever was? Coach Wooden.
Yeah.
Coach Wooden out at UCLA. He won what? 10
10
national championships,
In a
maybe
row.
8 of them back to back or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's written books. Well, if you want to get something on leadership, buy his book. I've read it before, but it's been a long time ago.
What book have you found most influential?
What?
What book have you found most influential in your life and in your coaching?
Oh, goodness. I read, gosh, just nearly every great coach, I've read their book.
Okay.
Darrell Royal, Bear Bryant, Frank Leahy, just any great coach I would read, try to see. You want to know how they win. You just might pick. I guess it's reading about golf, and some guys found some little thing that's really helped him. You know, that interests you, and you'll try it. I'll try it, and see why it works or not. But that's the way we learn in coaching football.
Now, we know you're very competitive, and I understand you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the reason you get up is that you want to beat the sun up, so you start with a victory?
I get up at 4 to read the Bible.
That's right, okay.
I want to get my day started right.
All right.
You know what? I've done that for years, and I ain't stopping.
Okay.
Care what the government says.
Very good. All right, switching over to skills. What skills do you consider to be most essential for a coach or for a golf instructor?
What skills would be? It'd probably be mental.
Mental skills?
It'd probably be mental. We've got to get that thing thinking correctly.
Okay.
Before we can get this thing thinking correctly.
Right.
It goes back to what I just talked about, that song. It starts here. I've got to believe in here I can do it. I've got to believe in here I'm as good as anybody else, you know what? And that I can do it. And then now get the facts, get that brain to feed those facts, and let your heart motivate you to do it, and then practice.
There you go. What about communication? By the way, excellent communication. Would you say that's a characteristic of a great coach, a good communicator?
If you're going to succeed, you've got to communicate.
Okay.
I've got to. You could really know the game. You can really know the game of golf. You know it good as anybody, but you can't tell somebody else how to do it. That's bad. You might not be a good player, but boy, you can really explain what you should do. You know, I can explain what you should do, and that guy can understand it. You know, I think being able to communicate is probably the greatest thing about coaching. If you can't communicate in coaching, I don't know what you're going to do for a living.
And how did you learn to communicate?
Huh?
How did you learn to communicate?
I don't know. I just, if I do, I'll say this. If I do know how to communicate, it is a God-given talent. Because I can't tell you how I studied it or anything like that. You know what? Just somebody help me.
Okay. What about planning? Do you see that as planning? Planning.
Planning, well, I was able to, when I first started, you know, I didn't have the advantage of a lot of coaches. I didn't come up under a Bear Bryant or a Dooley. I mean, I went to college, didn't have 1,800 students, you know, and so, you know, we just drew plays on the board and played football. And then as I began to coach it, I started studying it and studying coaches to see why they were successful, and picked it up from others after I graduated from college.
Okay. If we surveyed some of your past players and said, could you describe Coach Bowden, what would you think they would tell us about your coaching?
Well, gosh, nobody could answer that better than they could. You know, it'd be hard for me. I could think of some things I wish they would say. I wish they, I mean, I don't know what they say. I don't say, hey, son, what do you think about me? Huh?
How am I doing?
I would hope they thought I had compassion for them. I did try to do that. Now, that's what I tried to do. I tried to treat every player like he's my son. I coached all my sons. I had 4 sons. They all played football for me. At West Virginia, 2 of them at West Virginia and 2 of them at Florida State. And then I remember Terry one time laying on the ground, blood coming out of his mouth and his ears, and he's unconscious, and that's my son. And I'm the head coach. You know, I can't run up and say, this is my boy, y'all take care of this. I can't do that. Can't do that, you know. I had to stand back and watch the doctors handle it. Then my son Tommy, when we were playing California, he got hit and ruptured his lung. He has to stay in the hospital and can't come home with us. Now what I'm saying is I saw my sons get hurt, and I realized, hey, these other guys belong to somebody's mama, you know. And so I tried to treat them like my son. That's what I tried to do, you know what? And but again, when you see your own son suffering, you realize, hey, these other boys belong to somebody, you know. So I try to treat them like they're my son.
Yeah. I love the way you introduced the team rules to your new players. And maybe those of you that work with junior players could adopt this. You used to write a letter to the parents of the incoming freshmen or the guardians with the team rules. Could you talk a little bit about that letter and why you did it?
Well, I would write, I'd write the parents. Let's say we signed 25 guys. I'd write every one of them's mom and daddy a letter. And I'd try to tell them, I said, like, your son's going to run into the same problems I ran into when I went to college. Number one, I'm going to get homesick. I'm going to miss mama. You know what? Now, he's going to write you and tell you how homesick he is, how much he misses you. Don't you dare encourage him. Don't you dare baby him. He'll come home. He'll come home. You know what? And make him stay. Because once he stays a year, he ain't going to leave. And that's usually the case. But if a mama said, oh, honey, I miss you. And I know, oh, we miss you around here. Oh, I hope you do. He's coming home. And you've lost him. So that'd be one thing I'd tell the parents. You know, say, don't baby him. You know, because he's going to want to come home. Don't let him.
Yep.
Don't let him. And then I would talk to him about other things. I had a policy at Florida State, and I'm not the only coach, that when my boys would come to Tallahassee, they had to go to church twice. They had to go to a black church and a white church. I mean, every one of them. And now why? I wanted them to see they're away from home for the first time. I want them to see in Tallahassee you are welcome at any church you want to go to, whether you are white or black. Now you say, well, you got no right to do that. I would write their parents and say, look, I want to do this with your son. Do you mind? If you don't want me to, I won't do it. All right, in my years of coaching, I did have two parents that said, don't include my son, and I didn't. You know what? But most, hey, even if the parents are bad, they want the kids to be good, don't they?
Yep.
I mean, I didn't want my kids to be like me a lot of times, you know. But anyway, those are things I try to, because the thing you're trying to do as a team, and you're trying to do with your office staff, is get that togetherness, and nothing will hold you together any more than your faith. It just holds you together. You know what? And that's what you're looking for. That's what I was always looking for.
I understood you also had the parents read the team rules.
Yeah, I
to
would.
your
Yeah,
player,
I would.
which I thought was a stroke
I would
of
have.
genius.
I would list our team rules.
Yep.
Kid, we don't want him to do this. We don't want him to do that. We expect him to do this. We expect him to do that. And I'd send that to the parents and ask them to read that to your children, just to be sure they understand it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that was great. Last thing I want to talk about is your experiences, if you don't mind. It's often said that experience is our greatest teacher. When you think back to your coaching experiences, which experience do you think was your greatest teacher?
Well, I can tell you. Oh, good deal.
I want to get it all over the country.
Yeah. Well, I tell you one experience. This has to do with football. My first head coaching job, we're playing the biggest rival on our schedule. I mean, if we win this one, I am the hero of the state. If I lose it, they don't like me, you know. And I was at West Virginia. We're playing Pitt. Pitt's only 50 miles up the road. And that's the game all them West Virginians wanted to win. Well, at the half, we're ahead 35-8. Everything we do is turning into a touchdown, man. You know what? We go in at the halftime, and everybody's happy, and they're patting each other on the back and everything. And so we go out the second half, and I'm saying, now, Bobby, this game is very important to win. Don't throw it away. Don't blow it. So I went out there and played real cautious. I played cautious. Just don't make any mistakes, and you got it. And the other team began to catch up. They got momentum, and we could. Momentum is a big thing, isn't it? You get it in golf sometimes, too, don't you? Momentum. All of a sudden, you can't miss, you know? And they got momentum, and they beat us 36-35. Now, they wanted to run me out of town. That might have been the year they hung me up my tree. Yeah, they hung me up my tree one time. Thank goodness they used dummy, you know. But anyway, what did I learn what did I learn? Don't ever sit on the ball. I don't care how far you're ahead. Now, people used to get on me later on when I went to Florida State. Oh, he runs up the score. He's 40, he got you 40-0. He's still throwing. You dadgum right, I'm still throwing. I never sat on the ball after that. You know what? Yep. But I had a reason. Mm-hmm. Now, that's just one thing.
Yeah. If I could just follow up on that. Whenever I read that about that experience, and that's why I specifically wanted to ask him, the thing I was most impressed with is when he reported it to people, he never said, well, what I should have done. What you said was, what I learned from that experience, which means you never looked back. You were looking forward.
Yeah.
How today is going to make you better tomorrow. And
well, that's no doubt about it. You know, every day we learn something, and we've got to use it. Look ahead. We don't have to worry about that behind us. And I think, like I say, one of the biggest things I said, I don't know how important it sounded to you, but when I first realized this, it meant a lot to me, that we are problem solvers. That we're going to have problems. Everything going good for you right now? Everything good? You better watch out, baby. You're fixing to get it. You know, it's just that's the way life goes. You can't show me character unless you've been in a problem. If you've been in a problem and then you can solve it, you're building character. If you've never had a problem, you never had to build anything, everything's been given to you, I don't know if you got any character or not. And I'll never find out until you are in trouble and you work your way out. Now I got something. To me, that's life.
Thank you. We've got about 20 minutes, and I'd like to open it up to your questions. I understand we have microphones in the audience, so please step up. And Coach, I know you're good at Q&A, so you just hit who you want.
Hey.
It wasn't on for a second. You ever have any success with either a quarterback or a kicker who came to you, where in the job you had at the time with an unorthodox motion and maybe thought about changing it and didn't?
Boy, good question.
Since that's, kind of what we have. We every now and then we see a golfer with something unorthodox and maybe might have been better off not fixing. I'd love to hear the story.
Yeah, I don't know how much it applies to golf, probably some, but we've had that before where we'll have a quarterback come in that's doggone good, you know, great high school quarterback, boy, he's winning, and he comes in there and he throws awkwardly. Well, probably the worst thing I do is change him. You know what? So if we had one, to me, it's results. We're looking for results. And if he should come over the top, but instead he throws it out here, but he never misses, I'm going to let him, you go right ahead, son. In fact, teach me how you do that. You know. But now I don't know how much it apply with golf because golf is, but I guess every golfer has a little different swing somewhere, you know.
Coach, we've got a question here that came in on the internet from Dave Gedris. I hope I pronounced that correct. He said, if you could change one thing in all of sports, what would it be?
If I could change one thing in all of sports, what would it be?
Hopefully the pay for teachers and coaches, yes?
Huh?
The pay for teachers and coaches?
If I could change one thing in all of sports, what would it be?
And you've seen a lot of changes throughout the game,
Yeah,
football. I mean, the game has evolved a lot, and
A change that might help football might not help baseball or something else like that. But in football, a change I would like to see, it's kind of a selfish thing, but I would still like to see it, is that boys had to graduate before they could go into pro football. Now they come out when they're juniors. Basketball players come out maybe as sophomores. I'd say they had to finish school. But that won't fly, will it? Because they'd sue because, no, you're keeping me from making $1 million. You know, so that won't work. But that's what if I could change something, that would be it.
well, and the money that's in college football now, what, you know, as you said, the game of football is creating 95% of all the money for the college. That puts a lot of pressure on the coach, obviously, and you're seeing some things change it in that realm where coaches are there for a year and then they get shot, basically.
What's happened now, why is their turnover so big? Number one, there's two reasons. One belongs to the coaches, the other to the administration. Coaches are making so much money. They're making so much money. I think the highest paid college football coach is probably making $5.5 and $6 million a year. You know, now it's okay to make it if you win all your games, but once you start losing, the administration ain't very happy. And now the administration, you know, we're going to pay you this much money. You got to win. A lot of them don't win, so they're gone. You know, I think that's one of the turnovers are so big.
Yeah, in the front there.
Coach Bowden, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to ask you, we talked about motivation, talked about, motivation and
Leadership.
yes. And, you know, to culminate all that together in a complete season. I watched a lot of your 1999 season where you won the national championship. And, I mean, you really went on a tear that whole season, beat a lot of teams real bad and did it consistently. You went on and beat Virginia Tech there for a national championship and did that very consistently, or very convincingly, I should say. You know, throughout that year, you talked about winning from the heart. You know, how do you keep it for 4, 5, 6 month period there, getting kids motivated, getting them to perform at that level and just continuing throughout an entire year like that?
That's a good question. We were talking earlier about recruiting. You know, you've got to get talent. You've got to get talent, but the talent has to be motivated. You know, now as you're recruiting, recruit motivated players. If I've got a player here that's not motivated, say he's a great player, and I got to motivate him to go out there and fight, I can motivate him a game. But I can't motivate him 11 doggone games. He ain't going to listen to me, half of them. You know what? It's best to get a player that is self-motivated. So as you're recruiting and looking at prospects, watch them real good. Evaluate them good. Here's a kid over here, boy, he'll fight you to leave. You have to carry him off the field. He's not as big as you want. He's not as fast as you want, but he will fight you to the last minute. I don't care if he's ahead or behind. I want that boy. Now here's one over here. Ooh, boy, is he talented. God, he can throw the ball 70 yards. He can look at the speed he's got, you know. But he's not committed. He's not dependable. He's not dependable. I don't want him. If you can't depend on him, what the heck are you going to do with him? You know. So those little things there, I'm going a long way to answer your question. Recruit motivated players so they motivate themselves. Like Charlie Ward, like Derek Brooks, like Deion Sanders was that way. I never had to motivate Deion. I just had to tell him to shut up every now and then. You know, never had to motivate him. Be honest with you, it was all the way around. He told me to shut up.
Get in the back there, all the way up. You, yeah, no?
Yep.
Yes.
Coach Bowden,
Yeah.
I grew up in Tallahassee, and I was
Was that
always
back there?
Yes,
Was that you there?
that's me.
Okay, gotcha.
I grew up in Tallahassee, and I was always impressed with your football skills, obviously. But the thing that impressed me the most was I came past the golf course one day, and you were cutting your grass. And the question is, was it because you were thrifty? Was it because you were humble, or was it because you were just getting some exercise?
What did he say I was doing what?
You're mowing the grass,
Cutting the grass.
at a golf course.
Oh, at my house?
Yes.
It's because I was married. I was cutting the grass. Now, I used to do that. I used to cut the grass, and I got to make enough money. I didn't have to. I could pay somebody else. I'm back to cutting now, by the way.
Hey, Coach.
Yeah.
Haven't seen you about 10 years, class 84, and you talked about loyalty being key to being a leader. And any alumni at Florida State knows that your dream job was the Alabama job. You had a chance to go to Alabama. I just wondered maybe you could explain to the people in the audience why you stayed at Florida State.
That's a good question. I came to Florida State in 1976 from West Virginia. We were winning at West Virginia. We were going to bowls, and I told you a while ago Florida State was getting beat every Saturday. Why would you leave West Virginia and go to Florida State? Number one, when a coach is looking for a job, don't take one of them 11-0 jobs. Don't take one of them jobs where they won all the games, because you can't go one way and that's down, right? Now, Florida State was down. They couldn't go one way, and that was up. So that was one thing that enticed us to come back to Florida State. The other thing, Ann and I wanted to come home. We were from the South. We were from Alabama. That's where our mothers lived. We'd lost our daddies. So it was a chance for us to come home, you know. I came to Florida State with the idea of staying there about 3 or 4 years and going back to Alabama. I didn't come to Florida State with the idea of staying. Florida State, we ain't beat nobody. I want to go back to Alabama, Auburn, you know. So but we start winning. And so we just win right here, you know what? So we started winning, and I didn't want to leave. So then eventually I did get offered the job at Alabama. And but at that time I was 60 years old. It's too late. That was my home. It's where I always wanted to go. But then I felt that I should stay at Florida State University. I felt led to stay at Florida State, which I did.
We got a question in the back here.
Coach Bowden, I'm Nancy Corsolino. I graduated at graduate school at Florida State University. I went to there 77 to 79 as an assistant golf coach. But I wanted to thank you because you hired me to come and work for you so I could have a in-state tuition from an out-of-state, being out-of-state. So I got up every morning at 6 o'clock and I came and washed all the uniforms for the team. And I also got to put the tomahawks on the helmets. It was an awesome time for me to be an assistant golf coach, but to be around a winning coach. And me to be here right now listening to you is just a great thing. But I just want to let you know what you did to touch me back years ago when I was a graduate student there. And thank you for the job.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Coach, we're all familiar with the movie We Are Marshall.
Yeah.
You were the coach at the time at West Virginia, and
Yeah.
you receive a phone call from a coach over there after that. We all saw the movie. We know what happened. Talk
Yeah.
us through that, why you were so generous with opening up your doors and sharing your information on that offense.
I sure will. In 1968, I was an assistant coach at West Virginia University. I was an assistant coach that wanted to become a head football coach, like most assistant coaches are, wanting to move up. In 1968, Marshall fired their coach. They offered me the job. I thought about it about an hour and said, no, I think I'll stay at West Virginia. I think I can get a bigger job. Because back in those days, Marshall was not having any good years at all. So I stayed at West Virginia University. The guy that took the job was Rick Tolley, who I knew personally, played at Virginia Tech. And I knew a lot of their players because we'd tried to recruit some of them and this and that. And then I think he was there 2 years, and that plane crashed coming back from East Carolina. We'd played East Carolina the week before, flown back. They played them this Saturday and flew back, and the plane hit the mountain, killed everybody on the plane. I knew a lot of them. I knew a lot of their coaches and everything like that. Now, I had one person on that plane I was really concerned about, and his name was Red Dawson. Red Dawson was from Valdosta, Georgia. I had coached him when I was at Florida State as an assistant coach. I coached him, and he graduated and played pro ball and went to Marshall as an assistant coach. And he was with Marshall over there at East Carolina when that plane flew back. But he decided not to fly. He got a car, was going to drive back and recruit. Well, that saved his life. Everybody got killed but him. You know what? And when I found out he was alive, boy, I sure was happy he was alive. So it was through him that I made the connection with them. They hired Jack Lingle. Now remember, they got a football team, they got a schedule, and they got no players. They all did. But they had the freshmen, They got the NCAA, back in those days, freshmen couldn't play on the varsity. They got the NCAA to allow them to play those freshmen. So they decided to go ahead and they hired Jack Lingle as the head coach. So Red Dawson, the assistant to Lingle, called me, can we come up there and study your football? Study your film. They liked what we were doing. Well, I didn't play them. If we'd played them, I said, well, I'm sorry, you can't come up here, you know. But we didn't play them. Yeah, sure you can come up here. So he and Coach Lingle came up and spent several days with us. I let him look at all of our film and study our film. Then they went back and put in our offense, which we copied from somebody else. So that's the way, that's all we ever do, you know. That's all we ever do is copy each other. Then I had stickers put on a helmet for them. Marshall, they got a cross put on their a green cross put on our hats, and offered to do something else. I forgot, but the NCAA.
You were going to wear jerseys.
I think that's what
right?
it was. Yeah. And but anyway, that's the way it occurred. And fate is a funny thing. Now, if I'd have taken that job, I wouldn't be standing here today. I was offered the LSU job in 1949, and I really considered taking it. LSU is one of the top jobs in the country. And we played LSU that year, and my wife and I said, if we beat LSU, we're going to stay at Florida State. But if they beat us, maybe that's a better job. Maybe I ought to go to LSU. Well, we won the game, and I came back and signed a 5-year contract. But anyway, the guy that took that job, he got killed the next year in a plane crash recruiting. You know, I might have been on that one too. So fate's an amazing thing, and you know how things like that work out.
We got another email question here from Susie Whaley. What steps did you take to get those older players who were in the habit of losing back to having a heart, believing, and winning again?
That's a very good question. That is something they had to do. You tried to make the adjustment without making a big issue out of it. You know, it's not like when I did that, I said, okay, you old guys, y'all get out of here. We don't want y'all. Get out of here. All you new guys, come here. I don't do it like that, you know. You just say, this guy is going to beat you out. This guy's going to beat him out. And this guy's going to beat him out. Then you just do it as smoothly as you can, you know. And that's what we did. And naturally it hurts. But what you tell me a good way to do it. You tell me an easy way to do it. It's none. But it was definitely the right way because we went undefeated when they became seniors, you know, and they had two. They went to about, I think they went to about 3 bowls in their career. But that's the ugly part right there. That's the ugly part right there.
Yes.
Coach, of course, luckiest thing you ever had in Tallahassee is when you came there, and of course, Florida State. And I used to tell my players, you know, you're out there hitting that big bucket of balls. I don't know how you did it without your hands falling off, you're bleeding. So anyway, I'd tell my players, you got that rock pile mentality. I'd like for you to tell them 2 stories. You know, you went down to Gainesville and had some surgery, and a strange thing happened about a tattoo there. The other thing is, who's the best player now, you or Mickey Andrews?
Oh, probably Mickey.
Mickey?
If anybody I play, they're the best player. Ernie Langford, who was a golf coach at Florida State and who helped me a whole lot, used to give me that big bucket of balls I'd go out there and hit. But in I forgot, it might have been, was that in the 90s or late 80s when I had that back? Early 90s? Anyways, early 90s, I did it swinging a golf club. Got up and played at 8 o'clock one morning at a tournament and swung, and my back hurt. And dang, when I got through, I could not walk. So I went and laid down. I couldn't even get comfortable. So I had to have my back operated on. So of all places, I went to Gainesville. Because I heard this doctor down there was best, and he was. So I go out there and get my back operated on, you know. He did a great job. I was out the next day, I was working 2 days later, you know, couldn't do much, so I was working. But anyway, what Ernie was talking about, they put a tattoo back there of a gator tail running out my rear end back down there. Had that picture in the paper the next day, boy. So that's what Ernie's talking about.
Coach, we as teachers, we have to coach our students, and when they have success, we stand there and we cheer them on and all that other stuff. Unfortunately, it's not always success. Sometimes there are failures, and we all think FSU at all the greatness that you've achieved, but as well, we're aware of the wide rights and all that. When you are dealing with your players and trying to get them to respond after something that's as big, for lack of a better word, failure, as wide right, what were the things that you did as a coach to get your players to overcome that and be successful in that next situation?
Yeah, boy, that is so tough. And I'll say this, any mamas out there, don't let your son grow up to be kickers. What's that cowboy song? Don't let your son grow up to be a cowboy or something like that. Those poor kickers walk out there and win or lose a game. Ooh, golly. But anyway, we played University of Miami, and we had about 4 times we played them that whoever won that game was going to play for the national championship, and they won most of them, by the way. We did win a couple, but about 4 of them were decided by wide rights. I mean, we got a minute to go, we missed a field goal, 38 yards. Those were supposed to be gimmies. And I remember the first one, we was playing Miami, had a great game with them, and they're ahead of us by maybe 1 point or 2, and we're on their 38-yard line, about less than a minute to play. So second down, we're going to go ahead and kick and get it over with. So we cannot kick in. My kicker had never missed a field goal inside the 40, and he misses this one wide right. It broke his heart. It broke all of us, but it broke his, you know. And but somebody said, "What'd you say to him?" Say nothing. I'd say nothing. I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to say, well, how come you didn't hit that? Why did you pull it? Why did you? I mean, I feel so sorry for him. You know what? I did offer him a scholarship the next year because he was a walk-on. He was a walk-on. But you know, that hurt him so bad he quit. I felt so sorry for him. You know what? And he's now a lawyer, I believe. Thank goodness. And but we had kickers that missed them, and I never got on them about it. You know, I forgot what I did, but I didn't get on them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gavin Robinson, PGA Pro from Northern Ireland. I just
Really,
like to
that
ask
sounds
you,
like Long Island up here. Are you sure that's a Northern
that's
Ireland
Northern,
accent?
yeah, sorry about that. I've been
Okay.
away from home for a long time. I've got a question. Obviously, you've reached the heights as a coach of American football. which is probably the best team sport. We are coaches of individual players, predominantly an individual sport, apart from the Ryder Cup, which I shouldn't mention.
You're just making friends all over the place, aren't you? Who invited this guy?
What would be the biggest difference between being a coach of a team sport as being a coach of individual players?
I think the coaching part is probably very much the same. I think the coaching part is very much the same. Trying to teach a young man the skills, correcting his mistakes, giving him the confidence that he needs, showing him how to get the reps he needs to get better. The big difference is it's not a team sport. You know, I guess you're getting about time for me to leave here probably soon.
Go ahead.
But I do want to say this. Nobody loves to play golf more than me. I'm 83 years old now, and I live to hit a golf ball. I speak for a living. I speak 2 to 3 or 4. I go to Sarasota tomorrow to speak. And when I'm not speaking, baby, I'm hitting that ball. Got a course in my backyard. I ain't any good now, you know, but I love it. But it isn't, you got to do it. I don't have to have a good block to do good. I don't have to have a poor block to do bad. It's all on me. And to me, it's the toughest sport there is and the most likable and lovable sport there is. Y'all are blessed to be in the profession you're in. I'm proud of you, but there's 1,000 times more pressure on y'all than it was on us.
I told you I was going to tell this story if you don't mind. There's a rumor that coach is retired. Not true. Last month, you were in California. You were coaching a football team. Yes, it was a touch football team, and your opposing coach was Urban Meyer. You want to say something about the players you coached? Do you remember?
Well, a year ago, I went over to Iraq to coach some military school football teams who play touch. They play touch. You know, the teams, all those millions of troops got over hundreds of thousands that we have over there. They have teams, play touch. So I went over there with a coach at the University of Alabama. He coached one team, I coached the other. And then we came back. Now, so this year, they had it in Los Angeles, and it was called homecoming. They bringing these boys home to play the touch game. So Urban Meyer was a coach of one team. I coached the other team, and they just had a wonderful time. These boys came back. These veterans came back. They didn't know what to expect. They knew they were going to come over here and have a little all-star game, you know, good touch game out in California. Well, what they didn't know, it was going to be in a 12,000-seat stadium, a junior college stadium out there. What they didn't know, the stadium was going to be packed. What they didn't know, there were going to be cheerleaders. What they didn't know, there were going to be bands, you know it? And what they didn't know, that they're going to have me as a coach in Urban. You know, we walk in that dressing room, they go nuts, you know. And so, but anyway, it was so great for our troops. The place was packed. People were real good. And they had a lot of fun playing that ball game.
I think it says something huge about your patriotism, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I believe in that. Appreciate that.
I have one final question. You spent 57 years making a difference in athletes' lives, young people's lives, trying to make them both champions on the field and champions off the field. To us that try to do that basically same mission every day, what take-home lesson might we take away from your 57 years of experience? If you could leave them with one message, what might that be?
Well, you know, just feel like you're the luckiest person in the world. Count your blessings. We have a tendency to count the bad things. You know, I don't have enough money. I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. Count your blessings. You're breathing. You feel good. You can walk. You've got food. You've got clothing. You've got a house. Count your blessings. That would be the thing I'd say, you know, so that you don't go nuts. And those problems I talk about, be glad you got them. What would you do if you didn't have them? You wouldn't do nothing, you know. But again, I thank you for what you're doing, by the way.
Thank you.
Dr. Paul Shem and Coach Bobby Bowden. Thanks, Doc.
Good to see you.
Thanks. I'll take it from you, yeah. You bet. Great to see you. Thank you for everything.